Hi, I'm Lori Rosakis. Welcome to Video Aided Instructions Upgrade Your Writing series. This is the 10th program in the series, Avoiding Common Mistakes. Well, now that you know how to organize your ideas, create effective sentences and paragraphs, and unify your ideas with transitions, it's time to polish your writing so that it shines. Let's make sure that you directly respond to the assignment, you answer the question, and you stay on task. You'll learn how to clean up major errors in grammar and usage as well. Then you'll be able to express yourself even more clearly in writing. This is like checking yourself in the mirror before you go out and make sure that there are no stains anywhere on your outfit. Here are the issues that we'll focus on in this program. Answer the question that you've been asked, understand case, use punctuation correctly, distinguish between commonly confused words, understand comparisons and use them correctly, analyze sentences to determine the meaning of multiple meaning words, learn the rules for who, which, and that. Now, let's discuss some general guidelines for answering questions that you've been asked. Sometimes when you write, you can choose what you want to write about. But most of the time, you'll be given something to write about. You'll have a question or you'll have a prompt. This is especially common on standardized tests. If you do not directly address that question or prompt, you will not receive any credit for your answer, no matter how well you write, because they want to make sure that you are answering exactly the question that you have been asked. So it's very important to make sure that you understand that question and that you're answering that question. How can you do that? Well, the first thing is read that question several times until you are absolutely sure that you understand what you have been asked. Sometimes you might be able to ask your teacher or your instructor for clarification, but other times you may not be able to. So on some standardized tests, for example, you can't raise your hand and say, I don't understand the question. In a classroom test, the teacher may be able to guide you. But work under the assumption that you've got to make sure that you understand the question on your own. To do so, after you've read it through once or twice, depending on how many times you need, look for some key terms. For example, words like explain or describe or analyze, classify, argue, why or why not. Look for words that identify the specific task that you've been asked to do. Then, to make sure that you understand what you have to write about, restate the question in your own words. So read it, look for the key words, and then re-say it to yourself. Next, write a topic sentence. You learned about that in a previous program. As you write your answer, refer to that topic sentence over and over to make sure that you stay on track. You don't want to start with a very good, strong topic sentence and then veer off track because you've lost your focus on it. Make sure that you stay on it. Now, as I said earlier in the program, you must answer the question that you have been asked to receive credit. This is especially true with standardized high-stake tests. That's in part because you're being tested on your ability to answer the question. If your teacher is not grading that test, the grader will not be able to read your mind. So even if you're sort of close but you're not right on task, you'll be in serious trouble. Here are the 4 most common types of questions. Recall questions, analyze questions, evaluate questions, and synthesize questions. The 4 types can be combined. For example, all essay tests ask you to recall. So what is a recall question? Well, a recall question requires you to remember key events and key facts. In this instance, you are being tested and evaluated on your ability to know information. For example, explain how to set up a web page. You've got to be able to give the specific steps, including the facts, on setting up a web page. Describe how a bill becomes a law. Same thing, you're giving the steps in order. Trace the main events in the War of 1812. And summarize the key stages in cell division. Let's look back at those questions for a moment. Explain, describe, trace, and summarize. Those are some of the words that you'll see on recall questions. And when you see explain, describe, trace, summarize, or similar words, you know that you're being asked to recall specific facts. One of the techniques that I use when I'm doing a recall question is what I call a brain dump. What I do when I see a recall question and I identify it as such, I immediately jot down on a scrap of paper all the facts that I can remember, or just little scraps of those facts. And that gets me a little bit less nervous because I have some information in front of me. So, for example, on tracing the main events in the War of 1812, I might list 4 events very quickly. Then I'll go back and write my topic sentence and add those details and other details as well. Now, analyze questions require you to separate something into parts, examine each part, and show how it relates to the whole. You're demonstrating here understanding as well as recall. So you are going to have to give a lot of facts and details, but you also have to put that together into some kind of cohesive whole that shows that you understand its overall meaning. For example, analyze the events in the short story by William Faulkner. Explore the causes and effects of the Industrial Revolution. Show why it is important to recycle. Analyze, explore, and show tell you that you have analyzed questions. Back to number 1 for a second. When you're analyzing the events in a short story, you're not merely summarizing them. You're not going to give a plot summary. First this happened, then this happened, and then that happened. What you're going to do instead is to use the plot events to show the greater meaning of the story. So you might use it to show the theme. You might use it to say something about Faulkner's work. But those details function to a larger meaning. Same on exploring causes and effects and why is it important to recycle. So you're combining recall with analysis to a larger end. Evaluate questions ask you to make judgments. You make a judgment by applying a set of standards to a topic. You're also using recall and analysis because you're using facts and you're analyzing or weighing their meaning. Here are some examples. Are calculators being overemphasized in math classes? Argue yes or no. Mark Twain said, "A classic is something that everybody wants to have read and nobody wants to read. Give your opinion," supporting your opinion with specific details and examples. Florence Nightingale said, "You ask me why I do not write something. I think one's feelings waste themselves in words. They ought all to be distilled into actions and into actions which bring results. Agree or disagree." Go back to number 1. Argue yes or no. Number 2, give your opinion. Number 3, agree or disagree. Those are your clue words that you're being asked to evaluate. So in number 1, you might explain how calculators are used, but only to argue that they are or are not being overemphasized. Number 2, you might argue that, Yeah, people do read the classics, or maybe they don't read the classics. You got to be very careful here, because what some people do is they argue both sides of the issue, and they never reach their own conclusion. You can certainly argue the opposition to show that your point is stronger, but be sure that you argue your point and try to convince your reader of your viewpoint. And as you evaluate, make judgments and give examples to back those up. Now, when you synthesize, you're including all those other skills. You're including recall, analysis, and evaluation. These often involve multiple sources. DBQs are a synthesis question. A DBQ, as I'm sure you know, is a document-based question. So on a DBQ, you might have a map, you might have a photograph, you might have some text, you might have some other visual. And you are taking all those different prompts, synthesizing them to reach a conclusion. Here are some examples. Would you rather be popular with an entire group without forming one close friend, or have one close friend but not be part of a group? 2. Assume that Earth is doomed and only 2 more people can be saved. Nominate 2 characters from fiction or drama. Identify why each character deserves inclusion. Next, what are the connections between sunspots and solar weather? And last, explain the synthesis of art and astronomy in society. Now, you noticed here there's really only one key word, and that would be synthesis. These questions rarely have the key words that you've learned in the other 3 types. So these questions have to be read with extra care, so you make sure that you fully understand the task that you're being asked. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and label each of the following questions with its type. Then come back. Our first question, television is more interesting than people. If it were not, we would have people standing in the corners of our rooms. Agree or disagree? Well, this is an evaluate question, and you can tell from that phrase, agree or disagree. That shows you that you're being asked to give your opinion. Number 2, trace how the continents were formed. Well, you see the word trace. You know that this is a recall question. You're being asked to give back information. Number 3, what is the theme of George Orwell's essay, Shooting an Elephant? Well, theme has to be inferred or figured out from other clues in the story. So you might use character, plot, setting, dialogue, and imagery to figure out the theme, which is the author's overall message about life. That tells you that you're doing an analyze question, because you're analyzing the parts of the story to reach a whole. And the last one, drawing from John Donne's Meditation 17 and Ernest Hemingway's novel For Whom the Bell Tolls, explain how you view the relationship of people to each other. Well, you've got 2 works here. You've got John Donne's Meditation 17 and Ernest Hemingway's novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Combining the 2 tells you that you're doing a synthesized question. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program, reread each of these 4 questions, and explain how you would answer each one.